Welcome back to Yang Daily. I'll be your host, Alex Cheney, bringing you all the Yang news you need to live your life right. Sorry for the wait on this one, gang. I've been in a serious time crunch trying to get way too many projects done in too little time. Tried to get this one out before bed, but I was practically passed out from working too late the night before, and now Tesla's FSD 10.5 just came out, so I'm going to want to go test that because people are saying it's a really big improvement, so I'll let you know how that goes. Anyway, we've got some big developments in COVID and democracy to cover today. Let's get to it. Quick shout out to our Tier 3 patrons, Shay Meehan and Nathan Stankowski, as well as all our other patrons. You keep us all informed and engaged. If any of you out there want to join these advocates of humanity first and independent journalism, head on over to patreon.com/YangDaily. It would only take a couple of bucks a month from each listener to keep this podcast and community going and growing into the future. Now on to the news. You know what we haven't talked about in a while? The pandemic. Let's catch up. Following closely on the heels of the FDA's approval of the Pfizer vaccine for kids aged 5 to 11, the CDC has also approved it just yesterday. The child's dose is 1/3 the adult amount, and vaccine trials, according to the CDC, show similar effectiveness and side effects as for adults. Kids are the largest unvaccinated demographic at the moment. The FDA and CDC have also approved booster shots for all adults age 18 plus, while the CDC is recommending booster shots for ages 50 plus and for those at elevated risk. It stopped short of recommending for the younger age groups at this time. They appear to be waiting for more data regarding the efficacy of booster shots. We do know that the vaccines lose some efficacy over time, so boosters are needed at some point. Boosters for Moderna and Pfizer are advised to be 6 months after the primary doses, or any time 2 months after for the J&J vaccine. Pfizer says its clinical trial showed the booster was 96% effective at preventing symptomatic infection compared to vaccinated people who had not received a third dose. Effectiveness in clinical trials has matched real-world effectiveness pretty well so far. Hopefully that continues. And it's relevant. Right on time, we appear to be at the onset of a seasonal fifth major wave of COVID infections, just as happened last year. Europe, which has always been hit first, is seeing massive surges in case rates. After sitting at about 75,000 cases a day in October, U.S. cases are also beginning to spike. It's hitting the coldest states first, with increases so far ranging all the way up to 84% in New Hampshire. A half dozen states are seeing about a 50% spike in case rates so far. That will continue to climb and spread as we get deeper into the winter months. On economics, for those who don't like Twitter, Scott has put out an article that basically covers everything in my inflation thread. Some differences, but very similar, link below. As for democracy news, as of November 22nd, 15 states have finalized their redistricting of the 2020 census. Of those, 33 seats strongly favor Democrats, 82 strongly favor Republicans, and just 11 are highly competitive. That marks a decline in the number of competitive congressional districts and increase in the number of safe seats for both parties, leading to high polarization and low accountability and representation in Congress. Gerrymandering is not democracy. It is imperative that we ban it across the nation, state by state, if not federally. Ultimately, we need to pass something like the Fair Representation Act to establish multi-member districts and non-plurality voting. And finally, exciting news, the U.S. has broken a new record. The international IDEA think tank has, for the first time ever, added the United States to the list of backsliding democracies. USA number 1? IDEA says the deterioration of American democracy became particularly noticeable in 2019. The group cites the slew of new laws aimed at limiting freedom of protest and enabling voter suppression, as well as rampant tribalism and, of course, Trump's campaign to undermine trust in elections. They base their assessments on 50 years of democratic indicators in around 160 countries, assigning them to one of three categories: democracies, of which backsliding democracies are a subset, of course, hybrids, and authoritarian regimes. Unfortunately, we are not alone. This is the fifth consecutive year that countries veering toward authoritarianism outnumber those advancing toward democratization, in what's being termed a worldwide democratic recession. The number of backsliding democracies has doubled in the past decade, and more countries fall into the hybrid or authoritarian regime categories every year. If you're feeling overconfident, just take a look at other superpowers. It happened there, it can and is happening here. The changes that Forward Party fight for are not just to make things better. Major corrections to our system are needed just to keep us from regressing. It took us centuries to get to the rights that we have now. We do not want to have to go through that again. And we've seen in multiple recent coups around the world, the transition from democracy to autocracy can happen quickly. And it doesn't have to be as flashy as a military takeover. All it takes is for the voters to no longer be in charge of who runs the government. Elections usually still happen in such regimes, they just don't obey the will of the voters anymore. Gerrymandering, voter suppression, coercive voting methods, exclusionary primaries, legislatures overriding votes, all these things degrade true representation. They all must be addressed while we still have the chance. We know the problems, we know the solutions. We can be the generation that facilitated the decline of democracy across the globe, or we can be the ones who reversed it, setting the path for greater freedoms than ever before. It's time to decide. It's time to act. And that'll do it for today's Yang Daily. Bookmark and share the approvals of vaccines for kids and boosters for adults. Take precautions at holiday gatherings. Find out what you can do to ban gerrymandering and otherwise promote democracy in your state with the help of Forward Party, Fair Vote, or Represent Us. Flood Congress with calls, tweets, faxes, and letters using the easy volunteer contacts below. If you need help, consult the Income Movement Aid Database, the Mission Asset Fund, or United Way, and don't forget to Yang Daily.